Okay, hello. So this is part four of the Tara series, and today I'm going to be going through how to draw conclusions. So in the previous one, we went through how to identify conclusions. However, what makes this question different from the previous video is that the conclusion is not in the passage, which is a little bit annoying, but it is fair enough and a bit easy to do once you get the hang of it. So you're given five options, and they can be the conclusion, but they do not appear in the argument, so they will not appear in the passage. So that's something to keep in mind, and that also makes you think that all of the text is essentially reasons, and you need to find what those reasons would therefore lead to. Another important thing to note is that sometimes some options may both look viable, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they could be conclusions. So you just need to look for the one which has the biggest effect. And I'll go through that when we're going through examples. So if you see in my little question, the passage reads, Tom has been staying up late every night to revise, and he has been getting less than 5 hours of sleep. He has struggled to concentrate during his revision sessions. And which one of the following can be most reasonably concluded? A. Tom is tired. B. Tom will fail his exams. C. Tom has been revising for less than 5 hours a day. D. Tom's lack of sleep is the only reason he struggles to concentrate. Or E. Tom's classmates are better rested than he. So, whilst the previous question had the conclusion somewhere in the argument, this one does not have it. And you just need to logically figure out from what information we're given. So as you see the reasons, Tom has been staying up late and he has been getting less than 5 hours of sleep, and he's struggling to concentrate. So it's quite helpful to essentially summarize what the reasons are in less words, because the passages are long. This is quite short compared to what the actual passages are, but yeah. So following from those reasons, what can we reasonably conclude? I'm hoping you're thinking that Tom is tired, because that's the answer. And notice how boringly reasonable it is, and that is what we want, because we cannot conclude that he'll fail exam, because that's just, we don't have enough reasons or information to actually figure that out. And we can't conclude that he revises for less than 5 hours, because we're told that he gets less than 5 hours of sleep. So that's different things, and that's why you cannot skim read, because if you do, you'll fall into the trap of reading a piece of information and not remembering it correctly. And for E, we cannot conclude anything about his classmates, because we're given nothing about them in this extract. So that's one of the biggest trap of the questions, choosing an answer that could be true rather than one which is actually supported. So you need to find out the difference between those two. I would also be really suspicious of words like only, always, all, and will, because they're quite strong, and they make they make the statements more stronger. And yeah, it's harder to actually reasonably conclude that. But yeah, so this is an actual question from TSA, again from the 2008 paper. I'm going to read it out loud. It's going to take a while. Um, Socialist politicians are often taunted by their opponents for leading lifestyles similar to those of their capitalist counterparts. The theme of the taunts run like this: you object on socialist principles to gross inequalities in the distribution of wealth, yet you enjoy a high personal standard of living rather than the majority of the population. Therefore, you are not really a socialist. But the drive can easily be answered, for there is no hypocrisy in arguing, even from a privileged position, for a fairer and more equal society. So, which one of the following is a conclusion that can be reasonably reliably drawn from the passage as a whole? A. Socialists who enjoy personal wealth cannot object to others who amass even greater wealth. B. Someone can be a genuine socialist while enjoying a higher standard of living. C. Calls for reform are more effective if they come from the more privileged classes of society. D. There is nothing immoral about inequalities in the distribution of wealth. Or E. Is hypocritical to claim to be socialist if one enjoys a standard of living above the average. So just take a little pause and figure out what it could be. And I'm hoping that you would think that it's B. Someone can be a genuine socialist while enjoying a high standard of living. So you need to notice some of the words in the actual arguments that are given. So if we look at option B, oh sorry. So if you look at the question, you can see it says reliably drawn. So we're not looking for something that we personally would think about socialism and how we think it should be carried out, but we're more looking for what the passage actually supports. Um, and is B because the passage explicitly argues that a person can hold socialist principles and advocate for equality while still enjoying a privileged lifestyle, meaning that high personal weight does not invalidate being a genuine socialist. So the other options are incorrect because if we look at A, the passage doesn't really say that wealthy socialists cannot object to others amassing more wealth. It defends their right to for equality, quite frankly. Um, and for C, the text actually claims that the reform arguments are not hypocritical from the privileged positions, but at the same time, it does not state that they are more effective. So please read into your text a bit properly. And with D, it actually contradicts the premise that socialists object to gross inequalities, and with E, this seems more like a reflection of the opponent's view that the passage explicitly rejects as false. So whilst option E can mimic the quotes seen in the passage, it doesn't necessarily follow the line of reasoning that the passage says. So please keep that in mind when you're reading questions. Don't get tripped up. And yeah, that's all I have to say for that question type. So for the next video, we're going to go through identifying assumptions, and I'll see you then. Bye bye.